Give everybody like, I'll wait about a minute or so, and then we'll listen to this. It's like an hour and like a 2 hour long video. So turn the volume up, not down, up. Give people a couple minutes to come in and we'll listen to it. Maybe not on 80. That's a little high. Some people in the house are sleeping. So here we go.
This is Quinton.
How's it going, Ashley? I figured since you sent it to me and I haven't watched it yet, I'll just watch it with I'll listen to it with all you guys. Yeah, so I figured that'd be a lot more entertaining. So here we go.
At about a year and a half old, a little bit over that, 20 months. Like all children,
Can you hear that good, Ashley? Because I got my fan on. It's kind of loud.
he was blameless, he was innocent, and he was beautiful. And like all children, he was totally defenseless, totally and completely dependent on the adults in his life to take care of him and to look out for his safety. The evidence in this case will show that the defendant violated that trust, that most basic, sacred trust of a parent, in the most horrible way.
If you guys want to go watch the full video, Ashley, could you put the link down there? Because they do show pictures and stuff, and you ain't going to be able to see that from my live. But, yeah, if you're watching this later on, you can go watch it on Court TV.
In the middle of the night, she killed him, her own son, got in her car with his body, drove to a dumpster, and threw him away like a piece of trash. She would go home, go to sleep like everything was normal, and wake up the next morning and report it to the police as an abduction. I woke up, my front door was open, and my child was missing. Now the story started to fall apart pretty.
The crazy thing is, there's people that can't even have kids, and this woman decided to, instead of giving her kid up for adoption, to take his life. For what? Did he make her mad? What the hell?
Quickly, because of good, solid police work. But she would go on to tell a series of evolving lies over several weeks, only moving from one lie to the next as the police picked apart the first lie and presented her with the evidence that made the first lie untenable. So now it's time to move on to lie number 2, and 3, and 4. And as they're doing this with her, they're also searching for his body, which they ultimately discovered about 6 weeks after his disappearance in a local landfill.
If I remember correctly, it was like 2 or 3 days after Thanksgiving in November.
In pieces, unfortunately. And as a result of all of that police work and investigative efforts, which I think you'll be quite proud of when you hear about them in detail, the defendant is charged with his murder. So that's sort of the 50,000-foot view of the bluff, the bottom line up front for the military folks here. A little more detail on what happened, what the evidence will show. The 2 days that we're primarily concerned with here are October 4th and 5th of 2022. Specifically the night of October 4th, moving into the morning of October 5th. Now, at that time, and I'll try to go slow for those of you who are taking notes. At that time, the defendant is living here on the west side of Savannah, jurisdiction of the Chatham County Police Department, in his house.
I'm talking about when they found him in the landfill. I think it was a couple days after Thanksgiving. If I remember correctly, it's like 6 or 7 weeks after she reported him missing. They found him in a landfill. I think it's a couple days after Thanksgiving.
Center, with an in-ground swimming pool in the back. It's on Buckhalter Road, 535 Buckhalter Road. She had most recently lived in North Carolina, where she had met and lived with her most recent boyfriend, Daniel Youngkin, who you'll hear about. And some months before October of 2022, they had moved down and were living in this house at 535 Buckhalter. Now, the house belonged to the defendant's mother, Billy Joe Howell, who you see here, and her husband, Thomas Howell, who is not the
11/21. So when's Thanksgiving's on the 24th, right? So it's a couple days before Thanksgiving then. Or am I wrong? It's Thanksgiving the 25th. It's it's November 20 something, right? So it's a couple days before Thanksgiving. I knew it was I could be thinking of a totally different case though.
defendant's father, but is her stepfather. Also living in the house at that time is the defendant's brother, Paul Simon. They have the same mother and the same father. And Daniel Youngkin, her boyfriend from North Carolina, and the defendant's 3 children. October of 2022, she has 3 children by 3 different men. The oldest is Zane Wharton. I think he was roughly about 3 years old at the time. Zane has been through a lot with her. He's her firstborn son, and I expect you'll hear testimony that she considered him her ride or die.
So I was right. I had it backwards. It was 3 days before Thanksgiving, not 3 days after Thanksgiving. So I was right, but I wasn't right. So, yeah, okay. That makes a lot more sense. All right.
That's her guy. Sky Youngkin is an infant, right there. That is her youngest child by Daniel Youngkin. And in the middle was Quinton. Quinton was her child by a man named Henry Bubba Moss Jr. You'll hear that she'd had kind of a tumultuous relationship with Mr. Moss, that they had split before she even knew she was pregnant with Quinton, and that he initially didn't even believe that she was pregnant when she told him, and that he was never a part of Quinton's life.
I agree. The grandmother should have got prison time too, because Lillian, I think that's how it's pronounced. If it's not, I don't care. Wasn't even supposed to be able to watch her at all. Like, she was supposed to be, the grandmother was always supposed to be the one watching him, not her at all. Like, she wasn't supposed to be watching him at all. So yeah, the grandmother should be in jail too, in my opinion.
And I expect you'll hear some testimony about the way that background influenced the way that she treated Quinton. But you're supposed to love all your kids equally. You're supposed to treat them all the same. I expect you'll hear some testimony that that didn't happen. And she treated Quinton differently, and not in a good way. Here's the house from the street.
If you were watching this during the when it first became a big deal, this house got seen a lot. A lot of YouTubers paid attention to this house. Like there was a lot of YouTubers on the street watching this house. Like they were getting videoed every single day until she got arrested. I don't think they will, Ashley. I don't think the grandmother will ever face any charges, even though I think she should. I don't think she ever will.
The master bedroom where defendant's mother, Billy Joe Howell, and her stepfather, Thomas Howell, lived is over here in the two-story portion of the house, but on the first floor. Brother Paul Simon's bedroom is upstairs. And you'll hear in one of the defendant's interviews him saying, when you're up in that room, you can't really hear anything that's going on downstairs. It's kind of its own layer up there. Now, the defendant, Daniel, and the 3 children lived in a bedroom right through this front door. I think there was some sort of addition or something on the house at one point. This bedroom that they live in appears to be like a converted one-time living room or something like that. If you step through that front door, this is what you see. You see a couch.
When they show the picture of them stepping into the front door, that whole house is trashed. Like, and there was 3 kids living there, so it just shows that they were not getting the treatment they should have got for sure.
In the foreground, you see a desk behind that. And then on the far wall there, you see a bed. That's the defendant and Daniel Youngkin's bed. If you pan to the right, you'll see a closet door here. And then it's hard to make out in this picture, but beyond this closet door is the door into a bathroom that then feeds into the dining room. And that is the only way to get from this room to the main body of the house. You see a race car bed there. That's where Zane slept. We further pan to the right. You can see that race car bed completely, and you see a projector on the wall, evidently for, supposed for watching movies or something while you're sitting on the couch. And then if you pan into that right-hand corner, you see this pack and play. That's immediately to the right as you go in that front door. And that's where Quinton slept. That was Quinton's bed. Now, that sort of sets the scene as to who's living in this house and where they're sleeping. Before we come back to the morning of October 4th, I want to talk to you about what the evidence is going to show as far as what's the biggest thing going on in the defendant's life. And the biggest...
I will support every live broadcast of yours. Add my account and make me your friend. How's everybody doing over here on TikTok? Yes, I got my TikTok and my YouTube going. I figured I'll start doing that from now on. So if you don't want to watch it from YouTube, you can watch it on TikTok. If you don't want to watch it from TikTok, you watch it on YouTube.
Thing going on in her life in the months, days leading up to.
The case here happened about 1.5 years ago, a year and 2 months ago, or something like that. A little over a year ago. A mother unalived her son and put him in a trash can, and then they found him in the trash can in the landfill about 3 days before Thanksgiving, like in 2022, I believe. So, yeah, so pretty sad. If you want to go watch this video, Ashley just posted it. I believe that's what she just posted there. You can go watch the video there. It's a sad case, for sure.
is the status of her relationship with Daniel Younger. Things are not good. She is feeling unloved, undesired,
It was pretty disgusting.
ignored.
For sure.
And I'll show you a couple of text messages taken from.
And she's not showing any remorse at all, like, because I'm watching the actual video, you guys are just listening to it. She's not showing any remorse at all, so she don't even care what she did.
Her phone by the investigators that showed this. Now, this is kind of small on here, it's kind of bright, so I'll read it for you for those of you who can't see. Some of you may be able to read it, perhaps not all of you can. This is July of 2022. I want to feel beautiful, not barely average. I want to feel loved and not just liked. I want to feel wanted, not just tolerated. I want to be able to look at you and know it's just me, not wonder how many others there are. I want to feel like my body is worth.
I don't think it's just Southern folks. There's a lot of people that aren't right. It's just sad. Like, if you don't want your kid, give it up for adoption. Somebody will adopt it. And if they don't, at least the kid will be free of you anyway. So that's just my opinion.
Showing off, not like it's just been trashed from having 3 kids. I want to feel the way you made me feel in the beginning, like I'm treasured and safe. Not like I'm just here because you really don't have a choice. And you'll see quite a number of messages like this. It's basically an unbroken string of text messages all the way up to the day that she kills Quinton. August 6th, yeah, go get yourself some ass. I know mine is not good enough. Never was, never will be. September 10th, you're the reason I'm angry every day. You're the reason I'm depressed, why I feel the way I do about myself.
Wow. See, I've seen some of these emails because some people were able to get them, but a couple of those emails they just showed, they must have took them offline quickly and we didn't get to see them all. It happens all the time, which is sad.
Now, this is not a minor thing for her. I told you it's probably the biggest thing emotionally going on in her life. The way that she perceives herself to be being treated by Daniel, and perhaps to some degree actually was being treated by him. It's at least how she feels. This is such a big deal for her.
Excuse me.
That with her phone, at one point she filmed something that can only be described as a digital suicide note. She's in the car, and you'll hear her at the end say, I've got to go, I made it to the river.
I've seen a couple of fake tears that she's put on, but for the most part, she's like sitting there like nothing happened, like she don't really care. Like, that's sad. Like, you took one of your kids' lives and you ruined your other 2 kids' lives because now they're not going to be a part of your life. Like, she had 3 kids and she took one of their lives. Luckily, she didn't have enough time to take the other 2.
She's in her car, evidently contemplating driving her car into a river and ending her life. And she starts out saying goodbye to her children. She has some kind words to say about Zane. She has some kind, loving words to say about Sky. You might perceive that she momentarily kind of seems to be at a loss for what exactly to say about Quinton, her victim, the middle child. And then she goes on to explain that the message is clearly addressed to Danny. She goes on to attribute what she's about to do to the way that Danny has treated her. Now, this is a 4-minute some video. It's a little long for an opening statement, but we're going to watch the whole thing. And we're going to watch the whole thing because it's an important.
How's it going, Asian Silk Princess? I'm from Missouri. How are you? You're right. It's sad, but it's true. I'm watching on YouTube and TikTok, so if you guys don't see a message, it might be over there or over here. So,
window into her state of mind at this stage in time. This video was filmed in August of 2022. But the evidence in terms of the text messages and her statements will show that nothing really changed between when this video was filmed and October 4th of 2022. So with that preview, I'll play this for you now.
Sissy, Mama tried. And Mama's not here no more because she doesn't love you. I do. I can't love myself. If I can love myself, how can I love you? I've tried over and over and over and I've failed. I screamed for help and I don't get it. This guy, you are such a beautiful little girl. I wish I could watch you grow up.
You could watch them all grow up, but you decided to be a piece of shit mom.
I wish I could hold you for your first heartbreak because my mama didn't. Sky, I love you, baby girl. And Zane, you were so handsome, so sweet, so protective. You were gonna be such a good man one day. Just a good man. I hope you grow up and you learn what loyalty is. And you learn how to treat a woman and how to love a woman. And Quinton, baby, you are a middle child. You're so happy all the time. You smile all the time. I wish I could see what kind of man you would be too. And Annie, I loved you. I loved you with all of me, all of my heart. I loved you. I wish that the ground you walked on when we found each other. We were both in such fragile states. And I built you back up.
This part right here should be emotional to the mother, and the mother's sitting there cleaning her glasses like she don't even care about this at all. If you go search in my search, Tammy, and put Quinton Simon, a lot of the stuff I'm pretty sure I still got it up on my channel. You go back, it's like a year and a half ago. You're going to have to put Quinton Simon in the search because I post a lot of videos, but I definitely covered this case pretty down to the minute. So...
I would do anything for you. But there's this time that I was building you back up. You were doing things that would eventually tear me back down.
Wi-Fi included and a free standing box.
And even now, after everything that I think has been brought to light, hopefully it was everything, right? Even now, you look at me with the same look in your eyes that you have when you talk about Caitlin. I don't hear the love in your voice anymore. I don't feel the love in your touch anymore.
I don't remember ever seeing this video, so this must be another video they hid right away once this happened. Because a lot of her videos I reacted to, they should be in my YouTube channel. If you're not on my YouTube channel, you're on TikTok, it's Danny the Man Parker 2000, or yeah, Danny the Man Parker. You can find me on YouTube. And search Quinton Simon, and it should bring up a lot of the stuff that happened when that happened.
I definitely don't see the love in your eyes anymore. Like you truly loved me, like you claimed. You didn't even have done all that. Even when I was carrying your child and hating myself every fucking day, crying myself to sleep every fucking night because you did not want to have sex with me. You did not want to love me. You just did not want me.
Well, he was done. He broke up with you. Once that happens, you don't want to be with the person anymore. Go figure, huh?
And I wanted you.
He didn't want you.
I wanted you. I wanted you more than life itself. But you proved that it was only one way. That feeling was only one way. That love, that loyalty, it was all one way. You took care of my kids. Okay? You couldn't take care of me. You couldn't love me. You couldn't do me right. So please, for the love of fucking God, do my kids right. Do my kids right. I'm at the river now. Bye, Danny.
I'm at the river now by Danny. So that's where she was at. This is her emotional state in the summer, fall of 2022. That brings us back to October 4th. And here I'll give you sort of an overview of what the evidence is going to show us for the sequence of events of that day. Now, the first thing to establish is that on the relevant dates here, Billy Joe Howell, the defendant's mother, and Thomas Howell, her stepdad, are out of town. They're not in town. They're not in the house. They are sort of out of play. I expect that will be undisputed. So that leaves in the house Paul, the defendant, Danny, and the three children, Zane, Quinton, and Scott. In the morning of October 4th, quite early in the morning, in fact, the defendant and Danny take the three children to babysitter Michelle McCarty and her two teenage daughters that live on the same street. They live like right across the street.
The Michelle woman that ended up being the babysitter of the three kids, awesome woman. Awesome woman. Like, this family treated her like shit when this happened. Even blamed her for it. The lady that babysitted the three kids. The Lily's mother blamed Michelle for doing it. We later on find out Michelle didn't have anything to do with it, and there's even a video of Lily's mother storming into this house yelling at Michelle. Michelle didn't take that very kindly. So yeah, there's a video of that. So you definitely need to go look into this if you've never heard this case at all. There's so much that happened.
Here in Buckhalter. And it says babysitter up here, and I've called her the babysitter, but really you'll hear from Michelle, one of her daughters. And it comes across more like they're almost like a second family or a substitute family for these kids because of the parental shortcomings at 535 Buckhalter. So the evidence might show that the babysitter kind of undersells it a little bit. And the child care arrangement is this. At this point in time, Danny and the defendant are working at a warehouse in Port Wentworth, unloading, loading boxes. They're carrying boxes in a warehouse in Port Wentworth. And their shift starts at 6 a.m. They're working the 6 a.m. shift. So early in the morning, on the way to work, they'll drop off the three children with Michelle, with her two teenage daughters. And so they do that. And they both go to work. They clock in at essentially the exact same time, a little after 6 a.m. on October 4th. Now they clock out less than 2 hours later. And the reason they do that is the defendant is experiencing some kind of dental issue. She has a tooth that's bothering her and it needs to come out. And so they clock out right around 8 o'clock, just before 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, I forgot about
And they
that.
go to,
I forgot about the tooth being pulled, because a lot of people use that as an excuse for what she did. Like said that she was drugged or something from the tooth being pulled, and that's why she did what she did. I'm sure that's what her defense is going to use as an excuse.
some type of like emergency dental clinic or walk-in dental clinic, and she gets a tooth pulled. These are some pictures, selfies she took of herself in the dentist chair, and you can see the side of her mouth on the left side there, I think is kind of swollen. She sent these to Daniel, Young, and Danny, who was sitting out in the waiting room waiting for her. And so after this, they do not go back to work. They go home. And the rest of the waking hours of the day are pretty normal. They get some lunch. They relax. Her mouth is bothering her. She's tired. She's sore. And eventually at about 4:30 in the afternoon, they go and they pick up the three kids from the babysitter from Michelle, and they bring them home. So at that point, Danny, the defendant, and the three kids are in the house. Now Paul, he worked at the same warehouse, but he worked a later shift, and you'll hear what it is. It's something like 2 p.m. to late at night, around 10 or so. That was Paul's shift. So same place, different shift. So he's not there in the afternoon. Now they're there. They do dinner. They do bath time. They put the kids down. Quinton in his pack and play. I think you'll hear testimony or a statement from the defendant that Sky, the infant, slept on that couch that we looked at, and Zane in the race car bed. And I think it'll be undisputed, and I expect that it'll be undisputed that, at around 10 p.m., Quinton is fine. He's just in his crib, in his pack and play for bedtime. Okay? And what happens at this point sets off a chain of events that goes over the next couple hours and results in tragedy. And that is that the defendant and Daniel have yet another argument about how he's treating her. So sometime a little after 10 p.m. And that this is something she told to detectives eventually in some of her interviews. About how he doesn't want her, he doesn't want to touch her, he's not feeling desire for her like he used to. And we've already talked about this is a major trigger for her. This is the biggest emotional issue going on in her life, and it's significant. It drove her to the brink in the video that you've watched. This is not a minor thing for her. And so she leaves the house after 10 p.m. on the first of 2 trips that you'll hear a lot about in this trial, and that she didn't really want to talk about, at least truthfully, with investigators. And that first trip is to the drug dealer. She says that she left so that things wouldn't escalate between her and Danny. She was upset. That's her word. So it wouldn't escalate. The first place she goes is this Circle K.
I remember that.
And I should have pointed out that you can see her getting out of the car. That's at 10:29 p.m. So about 10:30. I'll back up and you can.
Right before she's about to do the most
You can
horrible
see her
thing a
getting out
mother
of
could do.
her Dodge Journey with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She's not in a good state. Anyway, 10:30, she goes into the Circle K. She buys a couple convenience store items. And then she texts Danny. He's got her saved in his phone as Lanny Baby. She texts him, I'm going to run to 204, I guess. That's at 10:32. Immediately after she leaves the Circle K. She might still be in the parking lot for all now. And 204 is an area you'll hear about in this case. It's sort of it's shorthand for our drug dealer. I'm going to run to our drug dealer. This is Highway 204. This is what this is around.
Good night, Ashley. Have a good night.
Reference to, and their drug dealer lives on a street right off 204. So she's going to get drugs to try to make herself feel better. This is a screenshot of some GPS plots from her phone that the police eventually made after getting into her phone. You can see Highway 204 here. And this red kind of blob up here is a series of GPS points showing that she's at the drug dealer's house on Arkwright Lane from about 10:45 p.m. to 10:55. And she's scoring drugs to use that night because she doesn't like the way she's feeling. This is some information exported from her cell phone extraction showing that while she was there at 10:49, she made an $80 Cash App payment to a Timothy Weston, who is her drug dealer, at least one. While she's gone,
Her drug dealer is using Cash App. That's funny. Like, here I am over here. Yeah, I'm over here. That's fucked up.
Paul gets home. He had clocked out at 9:56 p.m. And I think he will say that he took him a minute to get home because he was smoking a blunt in the parking lot or something like that. You're going to hear a lot about drug use in this case. And he gets home while the defendant is still out on this trip to the drug dealer. And he'll tell you that when he got home, he went in and said hey to Danny. And he saw the kids, he saw Quinton in his crib, in his pack and play. Quinton was fine. He even interacted with him a little bit. He'll tell you what it was. Hey, little man, how's it going? And he sees that Quinton is, hey, okay, he's fine. May not be completely asleep yet, but he's there and he's okay. Now, by 10 after 11, this is another GPS screenshot. It's hard to make out on this TV. But this is, by 10 after 11, she's got a bunch of GPS points hitting at the house on Buckhalter Road. And this is just to signify that this is around when she gets home. 10 after 11. And so she's home at that point. Paul is upstairs in his bedroom, going to sleep, kind of secluded from the rest of the family. And Danny eventually goes to sleep as well. And you'll hear her say this to the investigators, that she was the only one up and active in the middle of the night, in the hours leading up towards 1 a.m. Danny is sleeping because he's going to get up and go to work in the morning. He has to get up like sometime between 5 and 5:30 to go to work. And Paul is sleeping as well because he just got off work. He's tired. And you'll hear her say that I was the only one up and about. My tooth was hurting. I couldn't sleep. What she's doing is she's going on a bender. You'll hear her admit to this eventually. She didn't want to talk about it initially, but you'll hear that she eventually acknowledged that she was up kind of frantically using drugs for an extended period of time while everybody else in the house is asleep and out of play. You'll hear her talk about it. I would get a line, I would go outside, I would smoke a blunt to kind of bring myself down, maybe smoke a cigarette, then I'd hit another line and repeat the cycle. So she's in her house by herself, physically uncomfortable because of her dental issue, emotionally.
What makes you think that? Southern people are 100 years behind the rest of us? That's weird. So if you live in the South, you're a Southerner and you're 100 years behind everybody. Is that what you're saying? Because technically I'm in the South, and I don't agree with you. And I finished high school and I went on to trade school. Okay.
Correct. Because of what's going on with her and Danny, and it's resurfaced again this night. Well, the resurface is probably not the way to put it, because it's just an ever-present problem for her. And this is a bad situation. And this is a volatile, dangerous situation. And that's because you'll hear something that she later said during the investigation on a recorded call, on a recorded phone call to Daniel, who was cooperating with the police and trying to help him gain information about the effect that cocaine has on her. It's not just fun for her. You'll hear her say that it makes her angry and impulsive.
I become angry, impulsive when I'm
And so those are the conditions. She's up all alone, physically uncomfortable, emotionally unhappy, unstable to some degree. And around 1 a.m. probably, she kills Quinton. Now I'm going to focus on the what she did.
That doesn't make everybody that. Sad. It's sad that you look at things that way.
When things happen. And probably in closing argument when all the evidence is in, we'll talk to you a little bit.
I live in Missouri, and I don't believe the data because I see people every day, and that's not true. But that's cool. You believe what you want to believe.
More about the why. The why exactly in that moment did she do this? But for now, I want you to just understand the sequence of events and what happened with it. She takes his body and puts it in Dodge Journey, Georgia tag TEN 9300. And she begins the cover-up. The cover-up is not just the lies to the police. The cover-up starts immediately.
Like the lies with this case when it happened, if I remember correctly, there's at least 4 or 5 of them. Like she'd tell one story and then change the story when the story started falling apart, and she'd change it. And then when that story started falling apart, she'd change it. And that story would fall apart, she'd change. I think it happened like 4 or 5 times. For sure.
A little after 1 a.m., she drives down Buckhalter Road.
You can't go by this case being the way the people are. I can find cases of people in the north part of the world that have done the exact same thing this girl did. The exact same thing. People are violent if they want to be violent, if they choose to be violent. It has nothing to do with where you live. Nothing at all.
Which turns to the right here, but it's still Buckhalter Road at that turn. And comes into Ogeechee Road right here.
And if you think Detroit and California ain't worse than the states you mentioned, that's sad. You're looking at the wrong data.
And she pulls into this mobile home plaza. It's right here. Mostly what you're seeing is trees, but there are mobile homes in here. This is Azalea Mobile Home Plaza. And there's a convenient stand-at dumpster sort of hidden away under some tree cover in the tree line there. And she throws Quinton's body away like a piece of trash at about 1:17.
Everywhere, every place, all over. And if Missouri's on the list, it's not Missouri that's the problem. It's St. Louis that's the problem. And people, and that's with most states. Most states, there's one Pacific area that's the problem, and people associate it with the whole state. So like with Illinois, Chicago's the problem. With Michigan, Detroit's the problem. Like, so every state has a city that's the main problem. Not the rest of the state. Just one big city that's the biggest problem. So ours is St. Louis. Like I said, Detroit's is Michigan's is Detroit. Illinois is Chicago. Like, and then you associate that with everybody. You just can't do that.
She drives home. This is another export from her phone, showing that her phone was locked.
They're going to rank higher in education because there's more people. Michigan and California have more people than the states you mentioned. So yes, they're going to rank higher. They got more people. You gotta think. If there's more people, things are going to rank higher than if there's less people. It's just the facts.
From 2:01 in the morning until 9:13 in the morning.
Yeah, every state has lots of cities. But usually the cities, the big cities, are the problem, not the state. You're missing the whole point. This has nothing to do with this video, so I'm not going to talk about this anymore.
And this is just kind of a shorthand way of saying that's roughly about the time she
I am
she eventually
understanding.
goes
You're
to
wrong.
sleep. And her phone is inactive. Now, Danny went up for work a little after 5, and he tries to wake her up to go to work. She's supposed to go to work with him. Remember, they work the same shift. She has been up all night doing drugs, and he's been, responsibly sleeping, so he's able to get up for work. And he cannot wake her up. She will not wake up. And at this point, he's trying to get out of the house to go to work. And he believes that all 3 children are there. He does not go over and check the packet plane. He doesn't even know that Quinton is gone. You saw in those pictures the packet plane is all the way across the room in the far corner. It's not right next to the closet. It's not right next to the bathroom. He can't wake her up to go to work, and he's annoyed by this because this is, I think he may tell you it's not the first time this has happened. And they are kind of tight on money. They are trying to make money to either put a down payment on a house.
No, you're just trying to make it seem like your opinion is the only opinion that matters. That's what you're doing. And because my opinion ain't the same as your opinion, that means my education level ain't as good as your education level? That's dumb.
For security deposit on an apartment, so they don't have to live with their mom anymore. And he'll tell you he was frustrated by this. You're not going to get up and come to work and make money. And his decision at this time was to say, well, okay, you're not going to come to work and make money. We're not going to spend money on a babysitter today. Because they have to pay her every day, Michelle. And so he texts Michelle, hey, the kids are going to stay here with her today, Miss Michelle, 5:20 in the morning. She says, okay. And the reason for that is his thought is, look, if you're not going to get up and make money, you can stay here and watch the kids. Wake up and find these kids are still here. You can deal with it. They're yours. So he goes to work, and he clocks in at 6:11, 6 a.m., 6:11 a.m. And he will clock out at 9:15, a little over 3 hours later. And the reason that he clocks out at 9:15 is that at 9:14, 1 minute before the clock out, he gets a call from the defendant who's got him saved in her phone as King. He's got the 910 area code that's in North Carolina, where he's from. Now, this is a 21-minute call. And she calls him, and the cover-up, initially I said, the cover-up starts with covering this up to him. Before the police ever, she covered it up to the police, but before they ever even get involved, she's covering it up to Danny. She calls him and she tells him that she woke up, the front door was open, and Quinton was gone. And he would run out to his car, leave work, and come home, and stay on the line for 21 minutes. Police went to the warehouse that they work at, and they got some video footage to see, well, what did Danny look like when he was leaving the house, leaving work, having gotten this call. And this video shows him running out. That's Danny running out of work. You'll hear from his boss, a fellow named David Mullins, that David ran into Danny in the parking lot. Danny's running out, Dave's just pulling in and getting to work. And they briefly encounter one another. And Dave will tell you, he looked genuinely upset. He was for real crying, tears coming down his face. Danny does not know what is going on. He knows what he's hearing from the defendant, and that's it. So he rushes home. And I'll tell you this, I told you the call to Danny was at 9:14. As he's on the way home, on this call with the defendant where she's telling him she woke up and the front door was open, these are ADT records. There's an ADT security system on this house, and it keeps track of when each door was open and closed, or just opened, or just closed, having been open. Police got these records.
Oh, wow.
And you'll see
I didn't know about that. So, we're going to find out a lot in this case that we didn't have any idea about. So, they could tell exactly when the doors were open and exactly when the doors were closed in this house. And they have those records, which is actually going to help a lot, because she lies about when he supposedly left the house at least 4 or 5 times. So
front door didn't open until 9:22 in the morning on October 5th. Now that's 6 minutes in, 6 or 8 minutes in to that call with Danny. And so the evidence is going to show that she's on the phone with him saying, I woke up and the front door was open and Quinton was gone. And it's during that phone call that she's opening the front door. So you'll hear that she's essentially tampering with evidence, tampering with the scene, staging the scene to fit with her story before the police ever become involved. Danny gets home. Somehow, babysitter Michelle.
How can you even say you weren't involved or you didn't have anything to do with it when they can literally hear you on the phone opening the door to the house when you're telling your boyfriend that the baby's missing, and they can hear you open the door on the phone, and there's also a thing in your house that tells when the door opens and when it closes. There's no way to get out of that after that. They already got her with just that piece of evidence that she's lying. Crazy.
Got wind that this was going on. Maybe she heard screaming or something. She'll tell you how she heard about this when she testifies. She comes over. Paul hears yelling, comes downstairs, and now everybody's there and they're looking for Quinton. And the defendant, of course, is the only person who knows where he actually is, and that's in a dumpster at Azalea Mobile Home Plaza. And they call 911, and here's what the defendant says.
Okay, shit. This needs to come out of nowhere.
Police show up a little before 10 a.m. and she repeats the same story to them. The evidence will show that that car is like the furthest one, the most recent one that entered the driveway is the babysitter's, Michelle's. She had pulled up, parked her white Pathfinder there. In any case, the defendant repeats that story to the responding officers, and you'll hear from some of that. Now, this is a missing child. So situations like this, it's all hands on deck. Everybody comes out. Forensics comes out. The forensics unit came out and had a drone up looking for Quinton.
Lots of money for no reason. Lots of money put into this case because I think it took like 6 weeks to find him. And a lot of spent money that was spent for no reason because the mother lied the whole time for like 5 or 6 weeks. They kept changing her story.
Areas of patrol to canvass the area and look for Quinton in the woods. All sorts of people are coming. Most of the command staff for the Chatham County Police Department showed up because this is a big deal and they take these things very seriously. One of the specialized units that responded after patrol officers had gotten there was the detectives for the Chatham County Police Department, CID, Criminal Investigations Division. And the first detective there for CID is a guy you'll hear from, Sean Wilkins. Sean Wilkins shows up, and he's the one who conducts the first, what you call more like the first formal interview with the defendant. And most notable from that statement that he takes from her at this time is when she says she went to bed and when she says she got up. And you'll hear that she tells him, I went to bed around midnight and I got up around 9. She doesn't say anything at all about this trip to Azalea Mobile Home Plaza a little after 1 a.m. She doesn't want to talk about that because that's the trip that she took to get rid of Quinton's body. So here's her telling Wilkins, I went to bed around midnight and I got up around 9 a.m.
When's the last time you saw your child?
When I went to bed last night.
And what time was that? Do you remember?
Around 12.
12? Okay.
12, I went to bed. I had my wisdom teeth removed yesterday.
I'm sorry, that's it.
So I went to bed kind of late.
I get you. Listen, I had them up too.
So I got up this morning about 9.
About 9?
And my front door was open, so I went up and I shut it, not thinking about anything like that. And I looked over and checked my kiss, and it was gone. All the rest were there. It was gone.
It's alright.
Went to bed at midnight, woke up around 9. No mention of the Azalea trip. There were 2 trips, 2:04 earlier in the night, 10:11. Trip number 2 is that Azalea trip, a little after 1 a.m. And she is totally omitting that. Now, all hands on deck, right? Missing child. There are detectives working on this case that aren't even out at the scene from the very beginning. One of them is a Chatham County Police detective you'll hear from named Kiana Robbins. Kiana Robbins is at the Islands Precinct, I think is where she was on Johnny Mercer. Like not anywhere close to here. But she's in her office, she's sitting at her computer and she's researching. She's seeing if she can find some helpful information. This is a stock photo of what's called a flock camera. The flock system is a series of cameras that are set up around town at major intersections or along busy roads. And what they do is they snap a picture of the license plates of all the cars that drive by. And police can use these for a number of different things. One of the things they can use them for is say you have a somebody who flees from a traffic stop and actually gets away, the police can't pursue them without undue danger. They can take that tag number of that individual, they can put it in a flock system and put like a lookout out for them. If that tag hits on any other cameras, it'll alert the police and they can try again and make the traffic stop. Another thing that the police can do, and what Detective Robbins did, was look up vehicles registered to the defendant. She finds that Dodge Journey that the defendant drove to dispose of Quinton's body. And she puts it into the flock system, looks it up in the database to see what, if any, flock cameras that vehicle has hit on anytime recently. And she sees that that car has been out late at night, driving around on trips that the defendant hasn't mentioned yet. She radios that information or maybe calls via phone. This is the tag she looks up. That's the Dodge Journey in the driveway at the time of the police response. She calls Lieutenant Foster, who you'll hear from. This is after the defendant has told Wilkins she went to bed at midnight and woke up at 9, hasn't mentioned anything about the Orlando trip or the Azalea trip. Foster goes up to her. He now has this information that this tag has been hidden on some flock cameras. He seems to have been driving around during the night. And he goes up to her, and he's a lieutenant at this point, which is like kind of a managerial type position. He's, by this time, is the senior man on scene, I believe. But he has a background in investigations. He was with the Savannah Police Department, I think, at one point, in their violent crimes unit, investigating homicide. So he knows his way around an investigation. He knows how to do these sort of things. He goes up to her armed with this information about the flock hits.
I said I'm not going to comment to you anymore. I'm doing this video about this.
And he wants to know what these trips were about. So he goes up to her and he asks her, "Did you go anywhere last night?" And he's a savvy guy, so he's careful to tackle on, you know, like where the kidnapper could have followed you home. And she seems to know, the evidence will show that she seems to know that he knows something about this trip to Azalea that she took and is not mentioned to this point. And so she comes up with a story. It's not totally clear when she came up with it. But the story is that, that trip that I took away from my house shortly after 1 a.m., that was to go pick up Oragel from a friend at the Chevron. Now the Chevron is right next to Azalea Mobile Home Plaza. They're kind of right next to each other. And so that's her story.
I didn't even read what you said because I said I was done with it, so I don't. Keep talking. Have fun.
This is what she was doing, driving to that location at that time. My tooth was bothering me. I didn't have any Oragel. I went to pick some up, got some from a friend. This is the first appearance of the Oragel story, which lasts for about a week.
This is also now the second story she told. I believe there's 4 or 5, but this is all now the second bullshit story she's told.
Maybe a week and a half.
Did y'all go anywhere last night or yesterday? With that maybe she could have followed you or something? Did y'all didn't go anywhere? No, just you made you yourself.
Thank you, Miller. Have a good night.
2 o'clock yesterday afternoon? Okay, so where'd you go? Did you go anywhere else? Have you made your phone? So when did you get home?
Like, there's no way, like, literally no way this girl can get out of this. Like, they've got so much evidence on her, and so many times that she's lied. Like, I don't see any way that she can get out of this. I just don't see any way.
All right, so that's the story about what I was doing when I drove there. Now, I'll tell you this, she's trying to show them on her phone this trip on an app, Life 360. Life 360 generally tracks your movements. You can join with your family, and they can see where you are and have been, and vice versa. You may be wondering, well, look, if this trip was so sinister in nature, why is she trying to show it to them on her phone? And you'll hear testimony that the reason that she was comfortable holding out her phone as corroboration for this trip to the Chevron is that, again, the Chevron and Azalea Mobile Home Plaza are right next to each other. And looking at the screen, you can't necessarily tell which one she's at. You can only tell that she's in the general area. So she believes that this kind of helps prove that I'm telling the truth about being at the Chevron. Now, the police would later pull very precise GPS data from the phone, like not just looking at the screen, but from the actual phone, that puts her not at the Chevron, but right at the dumpsters at Azalea, which are, I don't know, maybe 100 yards, 75 yards from the Chevron. But that's why she's holding the Life 360 out and saying, look, this helps me. So that's the first appearance of the origin story, to explain the Azalea trip. The police take all three of the adults in the house. Eventually they say, we really need you to get Danny, Cole, and the defendant to the police station, sit them down for formal interviews, and just get like a complete sequence of the day from all three of these people. And the first interview with the defendant takes place in something that they call the lactation room or the nursing room. I think you sometimes also hear these things referred to as mothering rooms. And the reason for that is that Danny was in the single.
What's sad is you think your opinion is the only one that matters. But it's all good. You be you. Yeah, I'll be voting for Trump because there's no way in hell I'd vote for the fucking clown show we've had for the last 4 years.
Interview room that they have with the cameras wired up in the corners and all that. And this video is recorded on Detective Marion Lemon's phone. Now, by this time, this is a joint federal and local investigation. The FBI has shown up because they get involved in kidnappings, abduction cases. And what happens at headquarters is that they pair off teamwork. One FBI agent, one detective, and they each in a pair interview each of these people. And so Detective Lemons is paired up with Special Agent Brad Snyder, whom you'll hear from, and they were kind of partners throughout this investigation. And it's very open-ended at the beginning. What they're asking for is just give us an account of your day. Give us an account of the last 24 hours. Where have you been? What have you done? And so you'll hear Snyder asking him this. The video is really nothing special. I think it's just ceiling tiles the entire time because the phone is sitting on a table. But the audio is good. You can hear it. And she starts with, we left the dentist and came home. So she does start at the beginning.
So right now, again, we're sorry for everything happening. We can't imagine the emotions you're feeling right now. But it's difficult. Just things that the last 24 hours. Just kind of give me, what you've been through the past 24 hours. So the top 24 hours will be this time yesterday. So from about 1 o'clock yesterday, that's the time you're
So that's the start. I was leaving the dentist, getting my wisdom tooth pulled. And the end is the Oragel story, the Chevron Oragel story that she has as her last trip of the night. And she omitted that to Wilkins, is now had to come up with a story to cover this trip.
But that was really bothering me about almost 1 in the morning. So they called certain parents to see if they got bored now. No. So I got in contact with another one of my friends named Misty that I used to work with. She has a lot of mouth problems, and that's her. She had a origin. And met her at the chaperone. And got home here and got back home. But also 12 minutes. I got to go to like 360 and just show y'all where, bro. Everything was so long else I get back. You know? And my mouth took a while to get together.
Fuck.
Okay.
That just
Now,
happened.
a couple things about this initial interview in which she's asked to give an account of her movements for like the last 24 hours. No mention whatsoever of the trip to the drug dealer. She didn't want to talk about what she was doing that night in the state that it put her in. So that's omitted completely from this interview. And now she's put a name to the friend who gave her the origin. Misty is what she calls her.
Apparently, if I don't move, TikTok freaking says I'm not there, even though we're all listening to this. So I gotta move or something every once in a while. I was moving, but apparently not moving enough, or not talking, or I don't know.
Now, I'll tell you before we move on from that, I'll tell you this. The police asked her to go through her phone, and of course she's playing, the victim. I'm the victim, the mother victim of child abduction. So she probably feels some pressure to cooperate. So she lets them go through her phone. A couple things I see is there's no call to Misty, and there's no call to Circle K to check and see if they have original, which is something she said. First I called Circle
Damn,
K.
there you go. Another lie they caught her in, like, that they could prove by just looking at her phone, that she did not call Circle K and she did not call Misty, the two people she said she called for Oragel. So another lie from her. That's number 3, I believe. So
To check and see whether they have
Change
original.
the
They
story
didn't, so
again.
then I called Misty. None of that in there at all. They also see a message from the defendant to Danny. We looked at this earlier. This is when she's leaving the Circle K and is about to go to the drug dealer at 10:30. Gonna run to 204, I guess. This is something that she had left out in this initial interview with Snyder and Lemons. So they interview her again, and this time it's in the interview room. And they want to ask her, what's the deal with this 204 thing? Here's what she tells them. Oh, yeah, that was a trip to the drug dealer, but it wasn't actually to buy drugs. She tells them that the reason that she left the house.
I made a trip to the drug dealer, but I'm not there to get any drugs. That's kind of crazy.
House at 10:30 at night and went to her drug dealer and was there for 10 minutes was simply to pay off a pre-existing drug debt in the amount of $20. Now,
I
the
guess
evidence
that's
will show that that story is just absurd on its face. But in addition to that, the cash app was for $80, not $20. And she'll later admit that this story
Oh,
wasn't true.
that's like 4 now. 4 lies they've caught her in. So she said she went there to pay the drug dealer $20, but she actually sent them $80. That's a lot. There's a big difference there. That's lie number 4
But here she is launching it.
or 5.
Yeah, and I was already heading back by the time that.
So at 10:40, you texted them that you were turning on 204 to meet Red?
Yeah, like I'm turning on 204 now, like I'm not leaving them. That's what I was trying to tell them.
And at that point, you didn't get anything.
No, I just paid them $20. I gave them $20 and all that. It was a couple days ago.
Is paying off a $20 debt, not actually buying drugs. Because after all, she tells them, other than marijuana, I don't use drugs.
Well, another lie.
See, you didn't get a person for Red, you left her.
I spent $20. And even though I didn't get a person, like $35. Last time I asked him. I was person who makes it possible. I don't do it like that. Like, anything anybody ever, anything we're doing is fucking me.
Gotta move, so TikTok thinks I'm still there.
Anything that's not homegrown or thought of the community side, I don't want. I've been homegrown, I don't need to do stuff when I'm not hurt. Homegrown is wrong, not creative.
Very strong, detailed denial of the use of any drugs other than marijuana. And the reason they're asking her whether she got Percocet from the drug dealer that night is that they had seen some messages about buying Percocets as well when they went through her phone. And they asked her about that. What about these text messages with you? Look like you're buying Percocet, using Percocet. And her story at this time is, oh, those are for a friend. I'm just the middleman for her friend Cheyenne, who likes Percocets but doesn't, I guess, know a dealer herself.
This girl keeps naming people. That's not good to do. That's not good to do.
Unfortunately, we have to get a better understanding as to, what went on. We gave it to all physicians to go through the text messages. There's text messages there unless you purchase it. As recently as within the past 24 to 48 hours. So I think just relying on me like that. Is that dated or do you totally understand that?
Sometimes when you're asking me if I've done, I haven't done recently. I did a friend of Cheyenne, Cheyenne Crosby, who was going to draw it up. She will call me from time to time. If I see her call up, she will help me along the road, asking for her.
The more she talks, the more she messes up. Like, keep talking, because you're lying every time you open your mouth.
But we haven't messed with her since.
She does not want to talk about her drug use that night because that contributed directly to the state of mind that she was in and relates so closely to her killing Quinton in the middle of the night. So she feels that she has to tell these lies. And she wants to focus on 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. because after all, this is an abduction. It's not as though I did anything in the middle of the night. My child was taken after Danny left for work. That's her story. That's what she's trying to sell. And again, she forcefully denies this.
No, I did not. I did not take a Percocet right now. I will piss and cup for you right now.
Now, police follow up. Okay, at October 5th, they get statements from the defendant, and she's making all these claims that we've talked about. They get a statement from Paul, they get a statement from Danny. And what you do, and this goes later into the night, eventually it's kind of time to stop on October 5th and wake up in the morning and follow up on some of this stuff. So she has said that she was at the Chevron getting Orajel from Misty, her former co-worker. And so they go out and there are two real notable things that happen between the October 5th statements on day one and the next interview. And one is that they do what they call a video canvas. They go out to this Chevron area where she has said that this Orajel exchange happened. And they look around and they see if they see any cameras. They go in and they ask if there's footage. And they get footage from the Chevron. And it does not show her stopping there. In fact, it shows her driving by. And they get footage from the Azalea next door. And this is the major break in the case, because what the Azalea footage shows is her pulling in, doing a loop around the complex, and pulling up to the dumpsters and sitting there for about 2 minutes. And that's when she throws Quinton's body away. So you're going to hear in detail about the footage from Azalea, the different cameras and camera angles and what you can see on which one. But this is just a sample of that. This is her driving in the Dodge Journey after 1 a.m.
She didn't
on
slow down
mission
at the
to
speed
throw away her dead child. So that's one notable item of follow-up that leads into the next interview. The other is that they go talk to Melissa Missy Bray. The defendant's calling her Misty on the first night. She doesn't even get her name right. But she describes her as a former co-worker from Bojangles. So Special Agent Snyder goes out to Bojangles, asks, whether they can direct him to this person. They do. He goes out and he interviews her. And he asks her when the last time that she saw the defendant was. And she tells him, I haven't seen her for months. The last time that I saw her was when she ran it. It was like in July of 2022, months before what we're talking about. The defendant had run out of gas near Missy's house, had walked to Missy's house, and had borrowed a gas can. And their last contact was Missy texting her a few times, saying, hey, can I get that gas can back? And that was it. And it was months before. And Special Agent Snyder looked at these messages and they corroborate what Missy is telling him. So, Chevron story, the Met Missy at Chevron story is now just completely torpedoed. And so they bring her in for another interview on October 8th. And this one is with an FBI agent named Bridget Brock. And it's conducted at the FBI office in Savannah. And they confront her with these two findings. One, the security footage from Azalea and from Chevron. And two, what Missy has told them. And she just sticks to the Orgel story, just insists that it is true. And this is what that sounded like. She just hasn't had time yet to figure out how she's going to play this with this new information that they're presenting her with.
We'll talk about that, okay? Because Misty had talked to you.
Yeah, she has.
She hasn't talked to you in quite some time.
Yeah, she
Yes,
has.
she did not have a conversation with you about the ordeal.
Yes.
So in your mind, you've looked at all these timestamps and possibly you came up with a story that's partly true.
No, that is.
But there's very, very many missing pieces, right? And in your story, you haven't been completely honest about where you were at and why you were
I
there.
was 100% honest on where I was at. I showed the life 360. I told my even gave her the Orgel that she gave me.
Right, and that didn't happen. We've already interviewed this.
Yeah, I got the Orgel. That did happen. She said, I'm no loose out of her mouth. That's the reason why I asked her for it.
You have to stop saying this. It did not happen.
Yes, it did.
So that's the story on
That's
October 8th.
that's line number
Sticking to our
5.
guns.
Line number 5 we got right there.
Now, October 12th, she comes in for another interview. And this is with Brad Snyder, who I've talked about already, who you've heard a little bit from and seen a little bit of, and an FBI agent named Savannah Solomon that he works with closely. And this is at the FBI office. And this is a long interview. I've pared it down a little bit so we don't have to spend 3 hours watching it during the trial, but it's still fairly long. And initially, at least, she's sticking to the Orgel story. That's Savannah Solomon on the left, Snyder on the right, and the defendant in the middle. I did meet Misty, 100%. It happened. I'm telling you.
But they've already proved you did.
And she tells this kind of flowery story describing this meeting. She lavishes them with details about how this went down.
How long did y'all interact here? How long did you go?
2 minutes, just a quick little conversation.
Now she has Misty was smoking crack when she gave the defendant the Orgeol. And what is going on here is when the defendant is lying and telling a story to cover something up that she did.
Objection, Your Honor, at this point in time, with opening statements, Mr. Dean has the right to say what he expects the evidence to show, not his interpretation of it. So,
Sustained. Dean, I'm asking you for
The evidence will show that she added this detail to suggest a faulty memory on Misty's part. To suggest that, maybe this will help explain why Misty is telling them she hadn't seen me. And it is nothing to her to just accuse Missy of having smoked crack during this meeting that didn't happen. But in any case, a few minutes later, she finally admits that she didn't see Misty.
That's a good thing. It's a lot of long road up there. Did you do any work that night? I did work that night. But I found it and the car was the ones that I lost. I found when I got back to the house.
So after insisting on the 5th that she met Misty at the Chevron for Orgeol, and after insisting on the 8th that was the truth, and after insisting even at the outset of this interview that it was true, she finally admits that it wasn't true and massages the inconsistency by saying, I didn't speak to her, but I did go there with the intent of speaking. And she adds a detail that hasn't been included in any of her stories today. Oh, and by the way, you've asked me if I threw any trash away there. Yeah, I did throw some trash away. She has a story for what that trash was. The evidence will show she did not want to admit that it was Quinton's body. So she describes this trash that she threw away as stinky shrimp pasta that had been sitting in the car in a trash bag and smelling up the car.
Shrimp pasta. The whole car's like shrimp. What is that smell? I thought that was before I even let me go to a floor. I didn't go up there. I'm like, get out there.
Wow. She said that about her own kid.
And they asked her about this question. This is the most critical fact in the case. Throwing Quinton's body in the dumpster at Azalea, what she was doing at Azalea Mobile Home Plaza at 1:17 in the morning or so. And her explanation for that is, it's just such a minor thing, throwing away some trash. I didn't think to mention it in my hours of previous interviews.
It's the only stuff that I didn't think anything about, to be honest. It's just all food up in the corner. See what I'm doing about.
If you were just throwing out old food out of your car, you wouldn't get upset about it. Like she's getting upset saying that it's old food, you wouldn't get upset about that.
He does not want to talk about what was in that trash bag. They also revisit the drug use, and you'll remember the strong denials on October 5th which are repeated on October 8th. On this October 12th interview, she admits finally that, I did take a Percocet that night.
And you had a Percocet in conjunction with smoking? Yes. And about what time was you doing that?
By the time I got home, I took it like 11 or something, whatever.
And so Snyder asked her about her changing story. You've been adamant that you met Misty for Oragel, and now you're finally admitting to us, I actually didn't speak to her. You've initially, over the course of 2 interviews, maybe more, didn't mention throwing trash away. And now you got a very detailed account about doing that and what it was. And you, on the 5th, were adamant that you hadn't used any drugs other than marijuana. And now you're telling us that you did take a Percocet too. What's going on? Why is the story changing? And her explanation for that is, my faulty memory might have something to do with all the cocaine I was doing that night, which is a drug that had totally been absent from all of her prior counts and fits much more with the $80 cash app than the story about paying off the drug front. And so she is explaining her inconsistent stories by adding another inconsistency, which is an admission to cocaine use.
Juror has requested a short break. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's take a 10-minute break and resume with the opening statement. Mr. Dean, again, I'm going to ask you not to talk about the case, don't do any research about the case, avoid conversations about the case. The time now is about 11:29.
We'll skip to where they came back. It's almost over.
Order it back on the record in SBCR 22-03364J6. Counsel for the defense is at the table with Ms. Simon. Counsel for the state, along with Detective Lemons, are at their table. We haven't yet brought the jurors back in. Is there anything that we need to take up before we bring the jurors back in?
No, Your Honor, I'm ready to take it.
Not from the defense.
All right, let's proceed.
Jurors entering. Okay, thank you. And so for the record, the jurors are all back. They are being seated at this time. All right, all 16. Thank you. And Mr. Dean will resume with his opening statement.
So, October 12th, and we've come a long way from the October 5th account of only using marijuana that night. This is where we end up on October 12th. interview, she acknowledges that this wasn't like the one night she used cocaine. She's a regular user of cocaine, which she had denied in earlier interviews. Now, at the end of the day, the most critical thing is what happened to Quinton. What happened to Quinton in the middle of the night. And here is what she had to say about that.
If I did something to him, would it not be up to take responsibility? Whether we got fired, I would take responsibility, but I told people to God and took a bullet to the heart and crossed my arms. That's what I want.
I don't know if I did something to him, but if I did, I will take responsibility. She appears to be claiming something like a lack of memory, and I'll tell you that the evidence that you'll see is going to show that when she drove to those dumpsters at Azalea to throw Quinton's body away, you can see that she's driving normally. You'll see that she comes to a complete stop at stop signs. She uses her turn signal. You'll hear evidence that the investigators could tell from her phone that she plugged her phone into the USB charger in the car when she got in. So the evidence will show that she was aware of what she was doing when she took him there, and that her claims to just not know what happened cannot be true. They do not fit with the other evidence. We've talked a lot about what she has been saying to the police and the FBI on the 5th, on the 8th, on the 12th. But we haven't talked much about the other aspect of the investigation, which is the effort to find Quinton and figure out exactly what happened to him. So I'll talk a little bit about that now. Now on October 18th, police announced that they believe Quinton's body to be in a local landfill, and that they're about to begin this extremely challenging needle in a haystack search of the landfill. And this is how they got there. Detective with the Chatham County Police Department goes out to the mobile home plaza once these dumpsters become an area of interest after they've looked at the security footage. And he asks what garbage truck company services these dumpsters, and they give him that information. He gets in touch with that garbage truck company, and he learns that it was truck 309 from a company, 3909, I should say, from a company called Waste Pro. This is the list of stops for that truck on that day. Serviced the mobile home plaza. This is on the morning of October 5th, actually. Quinton wasn't in the dumpster for very long because it was empty that day. And this, what I'll tell you next, kind of goes to explain Quinton's condition when they ultimately found him. Not an intact body, but in pieces, little pieces, bones. So front-loading garbage truck extends its hydraulic forks into the slots on the side of the dumpster and drops Quinton and all the other garbage into the box in the back of the truck. There's a compactor in that truck that compacts everything. We want that compactor in there so that the truck doesn't have to go to the landfill as frequently. It makes the garbage smaller and take more garbage. That truck went to the Waste Management Superior Landfill on Little Neck Road on the morning of October 5th. This is a landfill ticket. They weigh the trucks when they're coming in. That's how they know how much to charge the garbage truck company for this particular load. This is for Waste Pro truck 3909. And with this information, the detectives go out and they talk to the landfill manager, and he's able to identify the area that garbage was being dumped and then kind of shoved to on October 5th. And this kind of general area here, that becomes the search area. So they have kind of an idea of like a general box in the landfill of where Quinton is going to be found. But this is still an extremely difficult thing. Even if you know the general area, there's like 2 more days of trash that have since been dumped there since the 5th. And this stuff gets compacted and moved around. They drive these compactors over it that have studded metal rollers, and everything just gets shredded. You may have this idea that you go into a landfill and it's just like a pile of bags of trash, just like they were when you put them in your garbage can at home. It is not like that. You will see that it is not like that. Everything is shredded because compaction is the name of the game in landfills. You will hear that. You got to get everything pressed down real tight because space is money. So at the end of the day, they have tons and tons of garbage to search through. And so they arrange the landfill search. They have some consultants from an outside agency come in and advise on this because it's a very technical thing. These consultants are able to tell them, based on the size of the box, about how many tons of trash they'll have to search through to exhaust the area, based on known rates of searching, like pounds per day. They're able to give them an estimate of how many people this is going to take and how much time it's going to take. They have to order specialized protective gear, steel-toed boots, Tyvek suits, respirators, gloves to put over the gloves. This is a biohazard environment. And they have to find volunteers, and this is an all-volunteer duty. All right, and for weeks, volunteers from the police department and from some other law enforcement agencies came out here early in the morning, and they do this landfill search that involves an excavator up in the search area, scooping up garbage, putting it in a dump truck. Dump truck comes down on this open area bounded by cones that they call the search deck. Excavator down here kind of spreads the garbage, that particular load, I think they were calling them lines, out of the search deck. And the law enforcement officers, these volunteers, get online with rakes, and they just search through it. This is what that looks like. And they do this for days, weeks, in the heat, all that gear on. That's why I said earlier, these efforts can only be described as heroic. They want to find Quinton. The evidence will show that these things are not typically successful. There's a very low success rate with these landfill searches because, again, it's a needle in a haystack proposition. But that's what the police are doing while she is playing games with investigators and changing her story again. October 24th, while the landfill search is underway, and those volunteers are suffering in the heat out there, not knowing whether the next raid is going to bring more tedium and boredom, or if it's going to bring the horror of what they're actually looking for. The defendant is still playing games. Having already admitted that she went to Azalea and threw away trash, but it was only stinky shrimp pasta, she does an interview with the news, WTOC, in which she still, even at this late stage, this is October 24th, that's 19 days after the initial 911 call.
I couldn't even imagine, like, the officers digging through the trash and then eventually finding him. Man.
And after several interviews where her story has just been shot to pieces, she does this interview where she holds herself out as the victim of a child abduction, still on that, and has the gall to make an appeal to the public to just please bring Quinton home safe. And the evidence will show that she knows he's not safe. And she knows he's not coming home.
My kids woke up to me screaming, "Where's Quinton?" And running through the house. I ran and looked everywhere inside out.
You can literally tell that her mother knows that she did it. And that this video, this news video, you can literally tell that the mother knows.
So I just started screaming for help. I've been here every day since this. I'm not running and I'm not hiding. And if something does come up that I am at fault, I will take myself to that police station.
You're an idiot. You just pretty much said. You pretty much said you did it right there.
All we want is justice for Quinton's life. We want justice too. We want answers. We don't care the cost. We want answers just like everybody else does.
You're so fucking
we
fake.
love you, baby Q. My little monkey, and we want him home.
Fake as fuck.
That same day in which she's claiming to the news they had no idea what happened and to just want him home, she sends this text message to Savannah Solomon of the FBI. And this is just the latest Hail Mary. After all the statements about going to the Chevron and then going to Azalea and what she was doing there, and I was actually throwing away trash and not Quinton. At this point, October 24th, the same day as that news interview, she and Danny are split at this point. He kind of seems to see the writing on the wall for her, has left town, I believe, and I think they're not together at this point. And so now's the perfect time to try to put it on Danny. I'm not lying for Danny anymore. The reason why my story about Oragel and shit didn't make sense was because Danny told me to say that he was the one who left, and my phone was in the car from my previous trip. And the reason she says that is her phone GPS puts it in the dumpsters too, not just the video. So anyway, she's throwing it on Danny and is now saying, you know what, I didn't actually make that trip at all, that's him, not me. And they get her in for an interview a couple days later to formalize that statement. And they just sort of let her talk and put it out there. The evidence is true. It was a desperate attempt to just try something new. Or, I don't know, a dozen lies to that point. And that interview was on October 31st, last day in October. On November 18th, 3 or 4 weeks after they started searching through that landfill, it's an arduous task, challenging thing, all volunteers. They finally find what they're looking for. November 18th is a memorable day for the people who are involved in this landfill search, because they find Quinton. And he's not in good shape. Okay, they find him in pieces. Mostly bones, a foot. It's not as though he's in one place on that search deck. They're finding bones in different lines, spread out. He's horrible. They send Quinton's remains up to the FBI lab in Quantico, Virginia.
I actually showed a picture of one of the bones. That's crazy. Sad.
Where DNA analysis is done. And they confirm what everybody already knew, is that this is Quinton. And the defendant comes in for one last interview.
A trial if she admitted to it already. That doesn't make any, like, why waste the taxpayers' money for a trial when she admitted to doing what she said she didn't do in the first place? So I don't know why we're having a trial. That doesn't make any sense.
So that's where she ends up. After having given this very detailed cover story about going to the Chevron to meet Misty for Oragel, and having added this later, this richly detailed account of having thrown away some garbage at Azalea in the dumpster, but it only being shrimp pasta. Her final story, when they found Quinton after tracing the trash and making it undeniable that what she was throwing away in that dumpster at Azalea was her son's body, the best she could do in her last interview is to claim a total and complete lack of memory from seeing him in his pack and play at 10 something to snapping back into consciousness on the way home from Azalea. And we'll watch it, you'll see more specifically what she says happened is that she was driving home, hit a set of railroad tracks, and that jolted her back into now forming memories again. That's the story she ends up with. After those richly detailed accounts of false statements for what happened during that trip, now she just can't remember anything that happened during the critical time period in this case, the murder and the disposal of the body. So that is as concise as I could make it, the account of what happened and what how the investigation unfolded. What will the trial look like? Okay, so that's kind of the story, start to finish. What will the trial look like? Trial's not like an opening statement. We bring witnesses in one at a time. It can be kind of disjointed and choppy because each individual comes in and they can only talk about really their role and what they did, heard, saw, that sort of thing. You will hear from some of the responding officers. You'll hear from people like Michelle McCarta, people in Quinton's life, and can tell you some things about how the defendant felt about Quinton and treated him. You'll hear from the investigators who took these statements and followed up on them. You'll hear from some of the people who were involved in this search of the landfill. You'll hear from some of the scientists at Quantico who were tasked with identifying Quinton and seeing what they could make of these remains, which are just totally torn apart. What I do not expect you will hear is exactly how the defendant killed Quinton. And that's because she covered it up. It's because she got rid of the body. All right. The evidence will show that her specific intent from the outset was that he never be found at all. And him being found in pieces, little bitty pieces, was the next best thing. The judge will tell you that in a case like this, we do not have to prove exactly how the defendant killed Quinton. Under these circumstances, how could you? And that is a sensible rule. Because what we have to prove, what is important, is not exactly how she killed him, but that she killed him. The fact that she did it. And the evidence that we will present to you will do that. It will do that, beyond a reasonable doubt. So at the end of the case, when all the evidence is in, we will make our closing arguments, and we will ask you to find her guilty of all of the charges in the indictment. I want to thank you for your attention. This has been a fairly long opening statement, but it was important to us, because it's our one chance to do it, is to give you kind of soup to nuts from the outset. What is this case about, and what did this investigation look like? So I thank you for your attention.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dean. Turn to the defense. Does the defense wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I don't think this is the whole statement, though, unless it's the shortest freaking statement ever. Let me skip to the end to see if his statement's only like 3 minutes.
The state has a conclusion. The core conclusion is that Leilani Marie Simon murdered her child. The evidence will simply not support.
It is just
I'm sorry,
like
thank
3
you for your
minutes,
time.
so let's listen to it and then I'll end this video.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dean. Turn to the defense. Does the defense wish to make an opening statement?
yes, ma'am.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't intend to speak nearly as long as Mr. Dean did. Because frankly, this whole case is about rumor, gossip, speculation, and innuendo, and ultimately, the state's bold conclusions about what they say happened but can't prove. Unquestionably.
Like, literally, the proof's already there. The hell are you talking about? Like, what he just ran through for like an hour and 40 minutes proves that she did it. Like, the proof's there. How are you going to get by with all the proof that he just told you? Really?
This is an emotional case. I know that. I have 5 children, 4 grandchildren. So I understand how emotional this can be. But this case can't be decided based on emotions. It has to be decided on facts and evidence presented in this courtroom. It can't be determined by emotions or their rumors and their gossip and their conclusions. And in the end, what you will determine is that's exactly the foundation of the state's claims. Bunch of conclusions, bunch of declarations, unsupported by actual evidence. These declarations about she did this at 1 o'clock, she killed Quinton. She drove here, and then all of that are their conclusions, what they have decided the evidence shows. But what is important in a trial is this witness stand,
Where witnesses testify and evidence is presented. It's not what some lawyer says. It's not what the state declares the evidence to be, and that includes this discussion about the statements. Mr. Dean has his ideas of what those statements represent, but that's your job. And it's not to simply rely on the state's conclusions about what they mean. The state has a conclusion. The core conclusion is that Leilani Marie Simon murdered her child.
Which she did.
The evidence will simply not support that bold conclusion.
There's no way you can fight the evidence that's against her. It's not even possible.
That is why, after we've heard all the evidence and all the argument, the evidence will lead you to one place, and that is a finding with respect to murder and concealing the death of another of not guilty. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Purse.
Like, dude, they have no chance of winning this case. Like, Leilani Simon is going to prison where she deserves to be, and it's not going to be good. Like, people in prison do not like people that done things to kids. So it's not going to end well for her at all. Bye, guys.